Welcome to the Lyric Voice, Writers on Writing, part of the 2021 Central PA Theater and Dance Fest. I'm your host, Jim Colbert, and today we're talking to singer-songwriter Rod Picott. I was first introduced to Rod's music by my friend Chris Sinelli, who lives in Long Island, and Chris burned me a CD sampler years back that included both Rod and a gentleman he grew up with and still writes with today, Slade Cleaves. And long story short, Chris was right on point, as he has usually been in steering me in the direction of music I might like. And I've been listening ever since. Rod has released roughly 10 official studio CDs, and that it's usually easy to just say, okay, you have seven CDs, whatever. The number's a little fluid depending on how you look at. There's both an outtake CD and a re-recording of Tiger Tom Dixon's Blues done in true acoustic form, but so it's a little bit fluid number there. His most recent release, Tell the Truth and Shame the Devil, to me is a stark and it's intimate and as full of rich storytelling as anything on Springsteen's Nebraska. Rod is also an author with several books of poetry and short stories, which we'll talk about later, and is currently working on at least a couple novels that I know of. So, welcome, Rod.
Thanks for having me. I feel my hair is appropriately messed up.
It is a writer's look.
Exactly, for a writer. Yeah.
So, excellent. Well, we're going to dive right into our questions here. Your songs often include colorful characters and storylines. Do you tend to create a story arc around the characters, or do you start with a story you want to tell and craft the characters within it? I'm going to throw out a personal favorite, Primer Gray, as a possible example. And that song kind of puts me back in the gravel driveway in Johnstown in western Pennsylvania in the 70s, working with my dad on whatever piece of crap car I was, driving at the time. And I'd be, invariably screwing things up, and he'd be patiently fixing them. But as far as the storytelling, do you, characters first, story arc first? How do you work?
I think it tends to be the latter. I tend to have like sort of an idea, and you build a character to put across that idea, if that makes sense. So, Primer Gray specifically, that's something that that was a song that was co-written with Slade Cleaves, and it's something that Slade and I talked a lot about. We grew up in a town where it was sort of frowned upon to have expectations, or to sort of try to have some success or do anything that was different from what everybody else did. You know how small towns can be so provincial like that, and the town that we lived in was like that, and there was this kind of expectation of not wanting to be too much, or not wanting to do anything different, and so that's a concept we've worked with a couple of different times, and that's sort of the subtext of Primer Gray, if you know what I mean. And for me, subtext is really, really important in songs. I love a song that tells a bigger picture with subtext than the actual lyrics are telling you themselves, so that the listener understands a bigger, wider story than just what the character says, if that makes sense. That's one of my favorite things about songwriting. And I'm always looking for that. Always, every song, I'm looking for some kind of subtext. So I would say the answer is the latter. I'm sort of looking at a concept, an idea that I'm trying to get across, and then creating a character to make that happen. So, yeah, I think that works that way for both Slade and myself. Yeah.
Very good. And that's a perfect segue into, your CD from a few years back, Out Past the Wires. And you had a second disc, Outtakes Past the Wires, which I'm so glad you put that out, because there's a couple of my personal favorites on there. But you created something that I've not been aware of any other artist doing, and that's a collection of short stories based specifically on the songs from that CD, right?
Yeah.
And I found, this is great, expanding on what you had just said. I found for me it created a greater understanding and appreciation for both the songs and the stories. And they all stand alone. But can you tell us a little bit about the process of creating that? And I know you're apologies to James Brown. I see you as the hardest working man in show business. You're constantly creating something. I love that. But how tempting has it been to do this for any of your other albums or songs if they were like 36 hours in a day?
Well, the it really was the first album where it even occurred to me to do that, because I had started writing short stories, and I was having a little bit of success with it. A very a small audience, but the book had started selling. I mean the poetry had started selling, and so I was getting a little bit of an audience in the literature world, and then. I wrote this. For some reason, I don't know, fear of death or something. I went. I had this massive creative spurt. Where I was writing poetry, short stories, and I was writing songs. I think I ended up with roughly 75 songs for that album, and so I had to. My producer Nielsen Hubbard said, "I think that's asking a bit much of me." So we cut it down to, what did we cut it down to? 22 or so, something like that, 23. And a lot of the songs were very narrative in nature, and I tend to kind of toggle back and forth between songs that are more emotional and interior and songs that are narrative. I sort of go back and forth between those two worlds. But there were a lot of narrative songs on this album. And at one point, I don't remember exactly when, I just had the idea that, well, what if I could take these titles, of these songs, and to some degree or another, write a story based on the song, so that I could expand the character. And some of the songs lent themselves quite easily to that, and some did not. Some of the short stories are really specifically connected to the song, and it's the same character, and you see, the same people, and it's just an expansion of it. And some of the others are really just based off the title, and sort of loosely based on the song. It was enormous fun. I mean, I love the James Brown reference because I love to work. I honestly do. I love working. I never stop. I write on my phone every morning. When I wake up, it's the first thing I do is write, and it's the last thing I do in the day is write. And so, it was a really interesting experience, and I had a nice response to the book once it was finished, and it's great to have an unusual thing to have at the merch table when I'm touring, and I got a nice response. Get a nice response from it.
I've truly enjoyed it. So yeah, I definitely recommend
Thank
it.
you.
So okay, so we share a sometimes dark sense of humor put it
Yes, we do.
mildly, and from conversations we've had, an appreciation for we'll say more somber material, right? The ones that aren't exactly the toe tappers, right?
Yeah.
And I've shared before the truth and honesty of the song 38 Special, and however we want to pronounce it, an Hermes purse, however.
Hermes, yeah.
I'm from Western Pennsylvania. We don't, we have our own vernacular. It's going to be a counterfeit in Johnstown anyway, right? So, so that one has always particularly resonated with me. But and I'm sure if you're coming in with like 75 songs for a record, there's going to be some that fall under this category. But do you ever finish a song or a story or poem and think, maybe this one is just a little bit too dark to put out there.
Yeah, I have, and some of them I've put out there, in spite of my own instinct that it might be too dark, and you picked up on one of the main ones, 38 Special in a Hermes, I guess that's how you say it, Hermes purse. I was corrected by a woman from California as soon as she got the record. She sent me a note. Of course, she had to be from California, right? Had to be from LA. Sometimes there are songs that you write. I think every songwriter goes through this. You write songs that are just incredibly personal because you're trying to work something out for yourself. You're trying to unpack your own luggage, and that's a song where I was doing that. But I felt like it was something so honest and revealing about it that I felt like it was worth putting on the record, regardless of how dark it was. And it's a subject that a lot of people struggle with. So your self-value and your self-loathing, and how you feel about what you're worth, and how you are in your career and in your personal life, and who you've been to people, and so it goes into those kinds of things. And there are a couple of really dark lines in there. It's dark is a funny word. It's a tricky word, isn't it? Because like when you and I say dark, we don't mean like Trent Reznor, We don't, we're not talking about Nine Inch Nails. We're talking mood-wide, like noirish, or
Right, right.
or deeply introspective, and maybe about some topics that have a certain amount of weight. But I like my art to have a certain amount of weight to it. I'm not entertained by things that are light, things that are frivolous. I'm just not. And I don't say that as I don't say that as a self-congratulatory thing. It's just that I'm interested in art that investigates the human condition, and period. That's it. The films that I watch, the books that I read, I'm not interested in a beach read. I don't read. I'm not going to read a romance novel. You'd be lucky to get me to read, a travel book. I'm interested in, Harry Crews and, Hemingway, and things that have a certain amount of weight to them.
I remember years back, we had a songwriters group here, and it was sort of very haphazard collection of people that were in it that weren't necessarily in sync with each other. And
Yeah.
the one lady, very lovely lady. She had a beautiful voice, and wrote pretty much very, very lightweight material, right? And I remember her saying to me, "You should write songs that make people feel happy." And one of the rare times in my life I had the response that I wanted was, I said, I want to write songs that make people feel. It doesn't have to go to I want to make people feel. And she's still my friend. We do not write. We don't share writing with each other. That's fine. But yeah, I think that's an extension of what you're saying there. So.
It's interesting. Even thinking back to when I was a little kid, I was always drawn to like those. Even as a little kid, I was drawn to the kind of R&B songs that were like real gut wrenchers. You know what I mean? Like the Otis Redding song. And, oh, she may be weary. I don't know. I've always been attracted to art that has weight to it.
I sometimes blame mine on my primarily Irish heritage. Like being sad makes us happy.
Oh, it. I've spent a lot of time in Ireland. You know it. You're dead on that one. I got Ulysses sitting up here, just waiting on me.
So, speaking of locations, you've been in Nashville for quite a few years now, but I still feel like many of your songs have their roots really planted deeply in New England. And of course, you spend part of the year in Maine with your father. Love reading those updates on Facebook with what Dad's doing during the day. But songs like the Norseman Lounge, Weldingsburn, they're clearly set there geographically.
Yeah.
But to me, others that are a little more universal, like Bailing or Junkyard, they really feel like they're cut from that same old Yankee town cloth. How much effect does your environment have upon your writing?
Oh, I think it's everything. I think it's everything. There's that old saying that, the land is the people, and which it actually means something else, but in this case, it actually kind of means the same thing. I don't think you ever. I don't think a person ever, unless you intentionally set out to do it. I don't think you ever lose who you are in those first 8 or 10 years of your life, And, I grew up in little, small, working class Yankee towns, and I'm still writing about it. I've been gone from Maine. I've been gone from New England longer than I lived in New England at this point in my life, and I'm still writing about it. It's a very specific thing, and you brought up Primer Gray. That's a very New England thing, a small town New England thing. That attitude of not making a show of yourself and not having ambition. You know what I mean? It's almost like I was like, remember when you were in like 4th or 5th grade and you suddenly realized that it wasn't cool to know the answer to the question in class? It's a bit of that kind of thing. Like you know the answer. You start to raise your hand. You go, oh no, that's right. I'm not supposed to be smart. I'm not supposed to be cool. I'm supposed to be cool. I'm not supposed to be smart. That's what I mean. So yeah. I write a lot about New England. I've got a whole short story collection that's based in New England that'll be coming out next year or the year after, and they're all the short stories are based in little New England towns, and
Great.
it's a very specific place. I mean, the whole country is like that, really. It's a huge country, and there's a really wide range of culture. It's part of the problem of the politics of our country is that it's so big, and the cultures are so different in the different places. This is a tough subject to bring up, but you say, even a real simple example is like the gun laws. If I'm in West Texas, if I'm in Lubbock and I'm in a cafe and somebody walks in with a handgun, I don't think anything of it. I think the guy probably got coyotes, that he's chasing off his land. If I'm in downtown Baltimore and somebody in a coffee shop and somebody walks in with a handgun, I'm gone. If you see what I'm saying. I mean, that's a oversimplification, but and it doesn't tell you how I personally feel about the politics of that. But that difference in culture is really, really wide, and New England is a very, very specific culture in certain ways, and I'm still writing about it, still trying to unpack it and figure it out.
Excellent. So, kind of wrapping things up here. I do want to encourage visit rodpicott.com. There's all kinds of good stuff. Even getting into have some of the crowdfunding demos and whatnot, going way back.
You've got the canon.
I do indeed. It's all great stuff. And that's not even mentioning the Bandcamp, the monthly Bandcamp live releases. So just, I mean, as I said, apologies to James Brown. I see you're the hardest working man. So last question for today. We're all products of our influences. Who are some of the writers who have inspired you through the years? Not just songwriters, but authors, poets, etc.
Oh boy, there's a bunch of them. I think James Joyce, Dubliners is might be my favorite book. The detail in that book is just absolutely beautiful. Nathan Brown, a poet, is not very well known, but he's a poet of some renown. He has a book called Less is More or Less. That's absolutely brilliant. In terms of music, I would say that my initial influence in terms of songwriting was Springsteen, because he was the first guy. Now it's just an accident of my age, but he was the first guy that I heard singing about people that I knew, that I recognized, and then from there I went to Tom Petty, and I went way back. I went back to Hank Williams and discovered all that stuff. And moving forward, when I discovered Lucinda Williams, I was just absolutely knocked out by what she does, the incredible simplicity and simultaneous simplicity and complexity of what she's able to accomplish, when she's at her best, is amazing to me. Gillian Welch, Steve Earle had an influence on my songwriting. I'm not sure I want to have a coffee with him. He's probably a lovely man. I don't know.
Depending what day you get him, right?
depending which Steve you get, yeah. But he's an amazing writer, amazing songwriter, and geez, the list is endless. I mean,
yes.
For pop simplicity, Tom Petty I thought was one of the great rock and roll writers. Geez, I'm having trouble. Seamus Heaney, in terms of poetry, the list goes on and on. Hemingway, in terms of he was a guy, he was a writer that I discovered. The real power of being economical. There's that famous line. Somebody challenged him to write a short story in as few words as possible, and what did he write? Baby shoes for sale, never worn. Gee, that's. I mean, I know that he was a troubling person, I know that, but the man, could he write? Holy cow! Jim Harrison, who's not as well known, but one of my favorite writers. Harry Crews, one of my favorite writers. And go on and on. You get different things, you learn different bits from different people.
Yeah.
And,
You used to do your live broadcast from a slightly different room than you do now, and I used to always be trying to read the books on the bookshelf behind you. It's like, I think I have that one.
You should see this pile over here. This pile is too deep, so I don't even know what's behind the ones in front. Yeah, I read a lot. Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been a whole lot of fun. I really thank you for joining us. This is just wonderful. It's great to get to talk to you live, and we are doing some work together, of course, but that's outside the realm of this.
Right.
And Rod will be contributing a performance video as part of the festival. So we'll be looking forward to that. That will be streamed during the festival, July 11th through 13th, 2021. Without further ado, Rod, I will be thanking you again for joining us here today, and be looking for Rod's performance, as well as Caroline Solabello and Judd Caswell, part of the Lyric Voice, during the Central PA Theater and Dance Fest. Our website is centralpatheater.com. And I believe that's all I have. Rod, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day in Nashville.
Thank you very much. I'm honored. It's a wonderful cast to be associated with, and I appreciate your support over all these years very, very much, Jim. I really do. And we'll have fun on our own project that we're working on. So, thank you
we
very
will
much.
Indeed. Thank you, Rod.
Thank you.